Kehinde suffers from indigestion. His twin Taiyi suffers from heartburn. Sometimes it's the other way around, or both. That's why they use Gaviscon Double Action. It soothes within 3 minutes and lasts for up to 4 hours. For double relief from heartburn and indigestion, Gaviscon Double Action.
One passenger. Big auntie. Come and enter my bus now.
Hey, conductor, this cough is serious. I beg, you need to go to the hospital.
Hospital? Auntie, if I go hospital now with this cough, those people will just say I have COVID-19.
No, they won't. Doctors say cough symptoms are different in every condition. Some are dry, others are wet, like your own.
God bless you, auntie. I have told this my conductor. The cough has refused to go, and it could be tuberculosis.
Conductor, check am o. Make you dey sure, because who no go, no.
Check that cough for tuberculosis.
Check am o, make you dey sure.
If your cough is more than 2 weeks, it could be tuberculosis. TB test and TB treatment are free. Just call the National TB Hotline on 3340 for information on where to get the test. This message is brought to you by the Federal Ministry of Health with support from the American people.
Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it. Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
When times are tough, we know that as a mother, one thing you should never compromise on is your family's oral health, because they deserve the best. Oral-B, all-round protection. Its great value, it protects your mouth from harmful bacteria and also protects you against tooth holes and gum problems which can lead to tooth loss. It strengthens your family's teeth and gives them all-round protection. So remember, protect their future. Oral-B for healthier, stronger teeth in just 1 week.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool!
Wow!
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this?
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
Well, thank you for staying with us on Good Morning Nigeria for this Monday. We had earlier announced the business news, and I will return to that now. And let's get Chimabi Water Energy to give us details of today's edition, or rather, Kunle Adeye for details.
On course to boost flow of foreign currencies into the country, the Central Bank of Nigeria recently introduced a 5 naira incentive for every $1 remitted into Nigeria through international money transfer.
Well, we were unable to bring you the business news as announced, but right now let's take a backgrounder to our conversation this morning.
The ratification of Convention 26 of the International Labour Organization in 1961 gave a statutory effect by the signing into law the national minimum wage by Nigeria in 1981. This signaled the adoption of a global standard which remained on the exclusive list of the nation's constitution.
Solidarity forever.
Recently, however, members of the Nigerian Labour Congress and the Trade Union Congress marched to the National Assembly in Abuja, while their counterparts in some state capitals across the country protested against an impending removal of minimum wage from the exclusive list to the concurrent list. This was in reaction to a bill that passed second reading at the House of Representatives in February, which seeks to remove minimum wage matters from the exclusive legislative list to the concurrent legislative list. Should the bill become law, the federal government will not have exclusive jurisdiction to determine a national minimum wage, and states will now have the power to determine their own minimum wage. While some lawmakers maintain that the bill will allow both the federal and state governments to freely negotiate minimum wage with their workers in line with federalism and avert nationwide strikes, organized labor are opposing the bill, arguing that some states cannot pay or are currently trying to reduce the 30,000 naira minimum wage recently signed into law by President Muhammadu Buhari. Considering the cost of living that varies across states and the inability to pay the current 30,000 naira minimum wage, should state governments determine the minimum wage it will pay its workers and as such move minimum wage to the concurrent list? Or should the current status quo be maintained where the minimum wage remains in the exclusive list as argued by organized labor? These are just some of the issues that guests on the program will be providing answers to shortly.
You're watching Good Morning Nigeria. We're reaching you live from our studios here in Abuja, and that is the Nigerian Intelligence Authority studios. Joining us to discuss our topic this morning, which is minimum wage, concurrent to exclusive list. Guests we have, and of course we have our guest right in the studio right here, Ismail Bello, the Acting General Secretary, Nigerian Labour Congress. Many thanks for joining us, Ismail.
It's my pleasure.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
And we also have our regular, public affairs analyst, and of course, a person we always want to call our own, that is Jide Ojo. He's likewise with us for the conversation. You're welcome, Jide.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me. Good morning, Nigerians.
Thank you so much. And of course, we're expecting, really, the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige, who with time we shall be seeing him here to join us on this discussion as we discuss minimum wage concurrent to exclusive list. Gentlemen, you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Yes, and it's indeed interesting to have you join us this morning for this particular edition of the program. Let's begin with Ismail Bello. Of course, what is really in the air now is the fact that there is a bill seeking to move minimum wage from the concurrent list to from the exclusive list to the concurrent list, and the Labour is kicking against that. So why?
Yeah, it's very important. First, people must understand what minimum wage represents. It represents the floor for the lowest of workers. That's what it means. Minimum wage is a substitute for wage negotiation, whether at the state or at the federal level, between the workers and the government. But the minimum wage represents the floor below which no worker should go. And that's why, for us as organized labor, we believe having it on the concurrent list meets the right criteria for getting all the parties, all the stakeholders across the states of the federation, private employers, government, small businesses, to come to a common understanding of what minimum wage should be in a country. And putting it on the exclusive list allow for that kind of tripartite arrangement, allow for that kind of social dialogue that will enable all parties, all stakeholders, as we've seen all over the years, set the floor for everybody, irrespective of where you may be at the level of the federation.
Oh, that being because when you say allow for all the tripartite or all those involved, are those involved? Are they at the states?
Yeah, they may be there at the level of the state, but if you look at the first, you need to look at what was the international best practice, what has been our tradition, what has been our practice, has it worked? And if you ask me, it has worked. Now, the tripartite partners involve NECA. NECA is a national institution. It involves NSA. NSA is a national institution. You may have representative bodies at the level of the states. All these key stakeholders come together with the federal government, the state government representatives, And that's how the floor is determined. That floor represents what everybody within the country takes. But with different powers within the different level of states, they can negotiate, pay above the floor. The floor is the floor for everybody. That's the minimum that you expect. And the last floor that was set at 30,000 was not an imposition by federal government. It was a product of painstaking negotiation lasting over a year, bringing together these critical stakeholders to agree at this floor. It was a very difficult one. But at the end of the day, it is not what we wanted, but it was a product of engagement between these critical stakeholders.
We will look at that really much later in the discussion, but I'm just trying to lay the floor and lay the background for this discussion and this conversation. When you talk about international best practices in this, and what is obtained internationally, and then the ILO laws and the rest of them, I mean, don't you see this fitting in Nigeria, or are we just out of tune with that?
We are not the only federation that set minimum wage. America has a minimum wage arrangement. America has states. America has a federal structure. The federal sets the bottom, and you find a number of states paying far above the bottom. We are talking here about setting the bottom for everybody. So that's what minimum wage represents. So in America, you have a federal minimum wage, about 7.5 or so. And then all the states find a way to ensure that they pay above. Those states actually pay above, below the floor. Every other state set their own margin above the floor. So what is wrong? That we have an arrangement in a federation where we set the floor for everybody. And this floor are determined by several other national criteria, inflation rate and all of that. You sit down to look at those data before you arrive at that floor. So setting that floor is very critical. More so in a country that you know that the structure at the level of the state is not capable of the kind of due diligence that we have at the federal level, which the critical stakeholders. And there's already a tradition of dialogue, of social dialogue, that has been deeply entrenched over the years in terms of setting minimum wage. So we believe that this arrangement protects the minimum. Protects the people at the bottom, particularly when you look at the current level of poverty in the country, and particularly wage poverty. Even the ILO released a document recently talking about wage poverty. Wage poverty is a situation where people earn far below what can hand them a decent living, that can hand them a living at all. And if you look at the situation and you want to compare even our current minimum wage, with due respect to the Honorable Minister, we should be talking of a review. If you have to look at the practical realities of what we have.
Minimum wage. All right. Thank you. We'll return to you as we make progress. But for now, let's welcome the Honorable Minister of Labour and Employment, Dr. Chris Ngige. Yeah. So you're welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you,
you have actually been at the helm of affairs when it comes to negotiating on behalf of government to an issue of minimum wage and other labor matters, come on, for several years now.
Yes.
What we're seeing today is the issue of a bill that is seeking to move national minimum wage from exclusive list to the concurrent list. Now, what is your take on this?
My take on this is that I'm a player in the industry, and for 6 years now, going to 6 years, I've been at the helm of affairs in the Labour Ministry, which by the labor conventions of the ILO, the Labour Ministry is the government arm of the tripartite organization. Labor issues are not simple and straightforward issues. You are talking about employer, employee, the owner of business, and the worker in the business. So if you look at it dispassionately, you will see that there is a kind of tug of war that is always continuous. Labor conditions for the workers, conditions of service. Then the employer is also struggling to make more profit and to keep his business running, whether the business is government or is private. So you start from that premise and then know that the oldest ministry in Nigeria is the Ministry of Labor. Everything you're talking about in Nigeria, whether it's education, health, construction, banking and currency, and the people who man them, you're talking about the labor. You're talking about labor so that the country, the economy can be on track. So for me, I've played part of the governors. I've been on their side. I've played the role of senators, lawmakers. I've been there. I'm now playing the role of national government. When I was a governor, I was a sovereign of a sub-national government, which we call states here. So I talk from a very advantageous position. Yeah. Yes, very privileged. The idea or the hula baloo, the crisis, or it's not crisis anymore for me anyway. There's ongoing about that bill. I'm preparing my memo to the National Assembly Committee on a constitutional review, House and the Senate. They have, because we have a bicameral legislature, they have two constitutional review committees. They don't have a joint. In the former times, they used to be joint until the issue of co-chairman and no co-chairman split the National Assembly into two. But for me, I don't think that bill is well thought out. And it is not a normal bill. It's a bill that's a private member's bill. You have two types of bill. You have a private member's bill. You have an executive bill. For such an issue in the exclusive legislative list to be touched, it should be an executive bill, not a private member's bill. That's number one. Number two, it is a very fundamental issue that is being talked about in the judicial system. So, in the second schedule of the Constitution, Part 1, you have all these things that make for a federation to thrive, and they are compartmentalized in that exclusive legislative list. Part 1. Part 2 of that schedule is the concurrent, what the states can do together with the federal. If you go to item 34, that is where this issue arose from. Labor issues. Labor issues all over the world are usually on the exclusive list. And on these labor issues, you have other distillate from it, issues of industrial disputes, issues of registration of trade unions, issues of fixing national minimum wage, and other items there. So it's an exclusive of the national government. Because when we go to ILO to discuss, it's not states that will come and discuss. It's national to national. National to national. The same goes for defense. Defense is on exclusive list. When we discuss defense treaty and the rest, it's national to national. Same goes for foreign affairs. National to national. In the former times in parliamentary system, we used to have what they call agent generals and the rest of them. But again, you subsume them into the national. Currency, national. No state can print currency. No sub-national can print currency. Insurance even is a national affair. So you can also now see that that bill doesn't flow very well. Because what he's trying to amend is to amend the foundation of the existence of the economy of Nigeria, whether you like it or not. Labor, workers, employment. It is from all these that other things flow. Poverty, social, that is even giving a good health system to your people, giving them education. So, I don't know how far that bill will go. I was a legislator. The Senate, which I know, and by the cost, the practice of the Senate, and the posture, and the components, the constituents, the people who make up the Senate, they are what you can call matured men. I'm not saying the other house is not matured, but you go there, you see people, former governors, they have tested it, former MDs, former ministers, they're in the Senate. So they have played in the field, and they know what is involved. I know what is involved. I support Labour 110% on this matter, because they are not being selfish this time. Right. My gentleman here, comrade here, has spoken at length. And everything he says, if I'm a teacher, marking him, I will score him 95%.
Okay.
Yes, he has done very, very well. He has explained all the things I will have explained to you.
All right.
We are 187 countries that make up the International Labour Organization. 187 nationals. And Nigeria is a member. And we have domesticated, we have accepted ILO wage fixing machinery. Number 26. In the year 1928, that was when it was done. Nigeria has domesticated it in 1961. That's right. There is also Convention 131 as a follow-up to make up for decent living. Again, 1970, that was when it came. Everybody has domesticated, including Nigeria. So Nigeria has a labor standing in the world, in ILO, labor diplomacy. Yeah. We are top. We are top. We are the only countries where in the ILO where you have the government body, Nigeria, in the governing board. You also have the workers group, Comrade Waba, is also in the governing board. And you have also our employers group, NECA, that is where you have affiliate of Manufacturing Association of Nigeria, NASIMA, small and medium scale industry, all of them are affiliated there. They are also on the governing board. And that shows you the regard the ILO has for Nigeria. And I will not want us to blow hot and cold. We have adopted all these conventions and the recommendations following them. The recommendation for the implementation, they're all domesticated there. And they're in the National Assembly.
Okay.
Because all our treaties are there.
Honorable Minister,
that's why you say that the bill is not well thought out.
It's all thought out. But I think it's just more or less... yeah, before you do that, let me get to, Jide Ojo. He has been around here, and then we really want to hear his thoughts and the opening thoughts on this very controversial, bill or this move by the members of the National Assembly. Minimum wage, concurrent and exclusive list.
Good morning, Nigerians, once again. And for me, I think it's a needless distraction. Yes, we are talking restructuring. We said we want some devolution of powers from the exclusive to the concurrent legislative list. But nobody had ever mentioned the issue of minimum wage among issues that we want to devolve. The governor of Kaduna State, which incidentally happened to be the home state of the lawmaker who initiated this, Honorable Dati Garba, was the one that even chaired the APC Committee on Devolution of Powers, or what they call restructuring, way back in 2017. The El-Rufai Committee of APC never mentioned the issue of labor among the issues that they want to devolve. What I hear around is issue of state police, issue of resource control, solid mineral, and all of that. So wherever this issue of kickstarting restructuring from the position of decentralizing minimum wage negotiation, or what they are saying that moving it from the exclusive legislative list to concurrent legislative list, whoever sold that idea to the honorable gentleman is doing him a lot of disservice, because even the 30,000 we talk, first and foremost, I have followed through the issue of minimum wage in Nigeria, at least in the last decade, from when it was 7,500 to 18,000, now 30,000. But we do know that even when it was 7,500, not all the governors were paying. And when it went to 18,000, similarly, I recall that one of the first, in the inaugural meeting that the president had with the governors in 2015, what they tabled was how they are unable to pay the minimum wage of 18,000 based on the fact that they met empty treasury, and that if the president wants them to pay, the president should give them bailout, which he did. And that is why there are insinuations to the effect that there is a probability that this honorable gentleman in House of Reps, who sponsored this private member bill, could be acting as agent of the Nigerian Governors Forum. That is not established, but you would want to think, what could have gingered, when we have other pressing national issues facing us, issue of insecurity, issue of economy, issue of poverty, and issue of minimum wage is a derivative of how to reduce poverty. Because if you leave the minimum wage negotiation to some governors, I'm sure that some of them will tell you that they can only pay 15,000. And then you look at the value of 15,000 now, or even the 30,000, which is the minimum wage. If you benchmark it against the inflationary trend, the purchasing power of that 30,000 has really, really gone down. It's diminished. So if you want people to earn a living wage, I'm in support of what the acting Secretary General of Nigeria Labour Congress said, that it should even be reviewed, even though we know, given the paucity of funds in the coffers of the federal government and all the state governors, that may not be ideal for now. More so, as the labor law says, the review should be every 5 years. So the last one was in 2019. I'm sure it's not due until maybe 2023 or 2024, as it were. But my own take is that possibly somebody is trying to fly a kite or distract us, because as we soldier on as a country, there are quite a number of issues facing us which necessitates that even to reduce poverty and unemployment, a lot more needs to be done to encourage living wage and to encourage more people being employed, taking off the unemployment market. Because the insecurity we talk about today is also a derivative of the fact that a lot of people either are not employed or they are underemployed, in which case their income is too paltry to take care of their basic needs. And survival is the first law of nature. So if you actually want people to survive, we need to have a more creative way by which we ensure our labor force actually they are in a position to take good care of their family and household. Don't also forget that for everyone working in Nigeria, there are an average of 10 to 15 dependents on that one individual. I'm a living example. Even though I'm not a federal or state worker, I know the kind of demands on my little income every month. So we cannot be talking of decentralizing. I quite understand maybe the perspective from which the honorable member is coming from, siding with the governors who says they don't have money, they don't have enough resources to pay workers. But then it's about prioritizing. If they really do want to cut down the cost of governance in Nigeria, there are quite a number of ways by which we can do that without harming the Nigerian workers.
Well, thank you, Jidojo. Let's come back to Ismail Bello. The three of you have actually explained the reasons why this bill is not tenable or why it's not necessary for us to start looking at minimum wage and moving it from exclusively to concurrent list. But the man who is promoting this bill actually said that in the First Republic that the minimum wage was in the concurrent list. I don't know how true that is, but that's part of the reasons why, let's put across. And again, look at this fact, that with the 30,000 naira minimum wage in this country, many governors are not paying that money. And Labour has been kicking against that. Now, what does that portend? Because he is trying to look at the fact that if this goes to concurrent list, that the governors now will be able to say, look, I can pay this, and he pays them instead of owing workers. Many governors who have left office today owed about 2 years' salaries or more than that for workers. So what is that the benefit? When workers get a particular benchmark, maybe call it a minimum wage, they don't get the money.
Now, again, let me repeat. What is the value, what is the importance of minimum wage? Is to protect that vulnerable worker, that low worker. People should not substitute minimum wage for normal bargaining between employer and employee. People should not substitute minimum wage for state government and what it pays its employees. Minimum wage represents that floor, the lowest of the lowest. That's what we are talking about. And that's why when you set it, I used to be in the private sector. I used to be in the textile sector. Most often, you find most of the private sector operating slightly above minimum wage. But once a minimum floor is set, everybody goes back to the bargaining table. They do some adjustment. They move up a little. But at the level of the state, any state government that cannot pay a minimum wage has no business being in government. If you can't pay minimum wage, the minimum is the floor. Nobody's check. Just look at that value. Just look at the need of the worker. Because even as a worker, first you must transport. You must eat. You must have housing. To be productive at all. If you don't have the means to get to work, you don't have the means to eat food. Let's even forget education of children and other basic needs. Even your own basic need as a human being, as a worker, that's what minimum wage tries to target. And that's why it's a painstaking effort. It takes a lot of effort to arrive at a minimum wage everywhere. And that's why it's important to have the input of all, which the Honorable Minister has done quite well. It's not always easy bringing partners together, getting them to agree. And I wanted to commend him for his progressive stand on this matter, because he knows that if you decentralize minimum wage, you will decentralize trouble. You will decentralize there will be a lot of issues, there will be a lot of challenges around it. But once you have it and you say, no, this is the floor, you go back out there, look at your pulse, see how you can improve the conditions and the life of your people. A very perfect arrangement. Recall that the first minimum wage was in 1981. Labour had to fight before the Shagari government entered into negotiation. 81, sir. Entered into negotiation. And we arrived at 120, which was quite a lot of money. It was about $150. That's at 1981. So if you really look at it,
I was a civil servant then.
Yeah, over the years, we've gotten devalued as workers. We are just struggling to get ourselves back to that normal, say that at least let's have a floor, and we take from that floor and adjust and ensure that the worker gets what is reasonable, what is fair, what can at least earn him a decent. We are not talking of a living wage, mind you. We are just talking of something that will give the worker the means to live, the means to eat, the means to get to work, the means to be productive. And as a nation, if you are not productive, we can't overcome poverty.
Yeah.
We cannot. So, and who creates this wealth that we are talking about? Who creates the national wealth? The worker. So, the worker needs to earn a decent wage. We are not there yet. We are struggling. The Honorable Minister knows that we are not there. But we are struggling, and because it's a product of negotiation, because it's a product of bargaining, because it's a product of consultation, because it's a product of dialogue, there are so many factors that comes to it, such that it is not what labor wants, that what the labor gets. But we try to look at it within the context of our national reality, within the context of our economic realities, to say what is fair to the worker.
Sorry, I'm not stopping you, but I am not speaking for the man who is passing this bill. Yeah. But when a minimum wage is reached, and this minimum wage is not being paid by states.
Okay.
Yeah. So I want to understand, where it's going is that if states are not paying this money, then the worker you're talking about is not benefiting from the minimum wage.
Okay.
That is the point.
Kieran, let me, because I can see you have focused on the worker in the civil service.
Exactly.
That's where your barrel, that's where it is mirrored to. The minimum wage we are talking about is for that worker that is on grade level 1, step 1. Level 1, step 1. The most vulnerable of the workers in the public service. In the industries and private sector, it is the man with the lowest entry point, the man with the lowest wage, the starting point of payment in a factory. Maybe he's a gate man,
cleaner.
Maybe he's a cleaner, maybe he's in a hospital, a mortuary attendant, or a porter that carries patients in a private hospital or in a government hospital. So, grade level 1, step 1, when you fix it and say this is the minimum, this is the floor, like he's telling you, this is where we start, benchmark, the lowest of the lowest, the man who is the most lowly paid here is this. Consequently, you will do what is called some adjustments. Because there's a man on level 1, grade level 1, step 2, step 3, 4 till you get to maybe 10, step 10. Then you move on to grade level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 till you get to 17 in the federal service, which is the director. You must do what is called some consequential movement. Because when you fix that one, step 1, you have impinged. For example, in the 2019, when we fixed 30,000, by the way, this 30,000 encompasses everything. It encompasses your monthly emolument, your transport, your housing.
You're not talking about basic now. Everything.
Basic, as the Yoruba man would say, everything.
Everything.
So this is it. So it's better you get it, because when you get it now, you understand the logic of the labor unions. The employers are not talking because they also know that what is being discussed is a no issue, because they want productivity in their place. So once you fix GL1 step 1, you go and consequentially adjust the others. Because, for example, like I said, when we discussed this one, we moved from 18,000 to 30,000.
After over a year of discussion.
Don't worry whether it's 10 years, don't worry. I was the deputy chair or co-chair of that committee with Madam Ama Pepo, former head of service and former minister, chairing. And government said we cannot chair. So we got a seasoned person who had the interest of workers too at heart. So when we did that 30, the original financial implication of 30 was on grade level 4. Grade level 4, step 6 or so. So it means we have taken the man at the lowest rung to the ending of the man on grade level 4, step 6. So you can't leave that man on that same level anymore. So we did what is called consequential adjustment. The 18,000 to 30,000 represented about 66%. So in our consequential adjustment in the federal, we negotiated it with what we call the negotiating councils of labor. Yeah. They have council 1, council 2, and 3, which are unions. The unions are put into different councils. So we negotiated it. Again, I chaired the government side with the head of service of the federation to arrive at what the consequential adjustments will be for all the salary structure in the federal civil service. You know, we have now con-heads, con-rise, con-tees, everything is con. So we have to adjust all of them. And it was by negotiation. And that was what we called a collective bargaining negotiation for consequential adjustment. Because you must consequentially move people up in their earning. So that the man on grade level 1, step 1, that is now earning the salary or the emolument of the man in grade level 4, step 6, does not now see himself as equivalent to the man on that level. Because there is gradation. That's why you have grade levels. So if you understand it that way, the problem is that state governments have what they call public service departments, establishment departments. And those areas are areas that the state government need to beef up. As a matter of fact, even though labor is on an exclusive list, I have advised state governors through the governors forum during that minimum wage to have a semblance or to rewire their Department of Establishment and Public Service Matters in such a way that the labor component, union management, gets a very big beef so that they can be able to discuss with the respective unions in the states, state chapters. Because when you now go to state, the Labour Congress, Nigerian Labour Congress, and the Trade Union Congress will devolve their powers to their people in the states to go and negotiate with their government. And that was what is done. So it was failure at that level that is manifesting in some state government not being able to pay the consequential adjustment. For example, like I said again, in our own gradation, in the gradings, there are grade levels where our consequential adjustment was only about 18% of original earning. There was a place like in the civil service where it came to about 21% for grade level 6 to 10, 10 to 15. We banded it. We put them in bands so that we can be able to pay. We computed the total payment and then knew what the federal government had budgeted for consequential adjustment. We were doing that within that budget. So in the States, they have a kind of, I think there's a mix-up. There's a mix-up. Even though we told salaries and wages, we offered salaries and wages to go and advise them and help them in computing the consequential adjustment. I do not believe that moving to say you put it on concurrent list is the answer for minimum wage. Okay. What they are mistaking for minimum wage is that discussion. It is that consequential adjustment as a result of minimum wage. Okay. We should not confuse it. There are two different issues.
There should be no reason for any state government not to be able to pay 30,000 minimum wage floor. The state government must also not confuse minimum wage with what they pay their own workers.
Yes.
There are private sector employers in every state, and everybody in Nigeria, everybody, I repeat, strive to pay this 30,000 minimum wage. So it's very important that every employer subscribe to it. Bear in mind, for us, where there's a union, we fight to ensure implementation. Where there is no union, the law binds on that employer. Even where the worker doesn't have any protection, the law protects that worker.
2019 minimum wage.
So that's the idea. People should understand it. Where there's no union at all, if the worker gather and say, look, this enterprise is not paying this minimum wage, the law protects them. And that's the idea.
They can go to industrial court.
Exactly. To protect the weakest of the weakest. So that's why we shouldn't reduce it to what does the state government pay his employee.
No.
What does this pay his employee? And like the Honorable Minister says, once we set that bottom, get back to work. Discuss, and there has been all kind of discussions at the level of the state. Some have agreed to consequential adjustment, Honorable Minister. But is the will to implement, and they need to prioritize the spending in the states to ensure that they focus on the workers and on the productive enterprise.
So that we don't, get off track of this, discussion. We're talking about minimum wage, concurrent and, exclusive list. Honorable Minister.
Yeah.
Good to know that you are a governor, you were a senator, and now a minister. You've been part of all these discussions, as you did earlier, and that's a good ground for you to really face it now in whatever way it comes.
Yes.
And you are also an APC stalwart.
Yes.
The Garba Mohammed Dati, or the Garba Dati Mohammed, the sponsor of this bill, is insinuating that the El Rufai, committee of the APC, talking about restructuring, has this issue of taking the minimum wage off the, the exclusive list to the concurrent list. I mean, what would you say about this insinuation or this feeling? Because this came out in some interviews he granted, some media organizations.
Well, I don't know, but what I know is that it's not everything that is in that committee recommendation that our party will execute. It's not. It's not cast in stone. If they recommend something that is not implementable by our party, we won't implement it. That is the truth of the matter. That's number one. Number two, the man who proposed the bill has exercised his right as a legislator. He's doing his work. It's part of the work he's sent there to do by his constituents. But, like I said, this bill you are putting, is it well thought out? And I don't know. I don't also agree with him that in the former regional government that it resides with the because we had a national parliament then, and if you remember, we practiced a parliamentary system. The states, regions also have their parliaments, and their parliaments at that time were strong enough. The states ran the economy too. They were only contributing to the center. If you like, you call it royalty or whatever. But that was the setting. But once national parliament in Lagos brings out a law, that law is an exclusive list law. And in every federation, in any governance structure, whether it's parliamentary system or presidential, once a national law is in conflict with a subnational law, the national law supervenes. So even if you move, as some people are saying, you put it on concurrent list with the states and the national government, federal government, if the National Assembly puts up a minimum wage act and the state assembly puts up their own minimum wage, that of the national supervenes. It will strike that of the state down. That's why I say that I don't see the bill flying I'm flying very far. Not to talk. So these are the things that needs to be known. I also think we don't have to dissipate energy on this. And I also want Labour to also know that the government of Muhammadu Buhari will feel for them. That is why we are putting in a lot of palliatives in place now. We are even giving cash to people. Right now, as we are negotiating, we are doing conditional cash transfer for the labor unions, for workers, both in the public and private sector. Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs handling it. About 80,000 people want to be given top-up cash every month. And it is part of the 1 million that is being expanded for rural poor. Workers can be poor. I was a worker. I was a civil servant. And I left the service on grade level 16. So if you add that experience again to the one I have, you can see that I was a wage earner. And this president also was a wage earner. Make no mistake about it. From second lieutenant to major general, he was earning wages and also a farmer to complement his earnings.
All right, thank you.
So workers should also farm.
Yes.
A comrade.
Jideojo, this bill has passed a second reading at the House of Representatives. Do you see the bill flying? It's gone more than halfway. Do you see it flying?
I can't see it fly. I don't see it fly, and I know it will not fly. For the simple reason that the motive was not genuine. You can see the groundswell of opinion against this bill. Like the Honorable Minister has said, this is not something you do as a private member bill. And that's why I agree with Honorable Minister that we should not even be dissipating energy on this. Because being a constitutional matter, it's not as if every constitutional amendment have to be an executive bill. I mean, we saw in the last amendment exercise that culminated in 2018, amendment of 5 sections of the Constitution, including the Not Too Young to Run. Not Too Young to Run bill was a private member bill. It wasn't an executive bill. And it stayed true because it was part of, we also saw the issue around the legislative and state legislature and state judiciary financial autonomy. But being that this is an issue that cannot be isolated from the 3 tiers of government, I think the National Assembly should have even thrown this bill out at the first reading. Although they want to go the whole log, we are moving to the public hearing. It is at the public hearing they will know the magnitude of the public sentiment, negative public sentiment about this bill. Because, yes, on the surface, you know, the road to hell is paved with good intention. You may say, oh, okay, let's allow the states to determine how much they can pay their workers. But given my own reading of what goes on in the state, I know that the governors will welcome it, decentralization. After all, it has been an alibi with which they have been threatening the federal government. I recall part of the argument in 2015 was that, look, Mr. President, if you want us to pay this minimum wage of 18,000 as at then, 18,000, what you need to do, 1 or 2 things. It's either you review the what they call the sharing formula of revenue allocation, where the federal is getting 52.8%, and then the subnationals are getting 42% or 42.3%. And that was one of the things they tabled before the president. Alternatively, they threatened then that if the president would not yield to that, then they would downsize, they would reduce the workforce in their states. And at the end of the day, the president agreed to give them bailout. But let's come back to the issue of ability to pay. One, what is the size and the quantum of the number of public servants or civil servants in the state? These are usually less than 10% of the state population. And when you bring in aides in their hundreds, you pay them well above this minimum wage. I'm not sure there is an aide to the governor that had 30,000 naira. So, why don't you reduce waste in your state and ensure that you prioritize the productive workforce who makes the revenue possible? They are talking of improving internally generated revenue. If you don't treat workers well, they will not generate this income for you. If you don't treat them well, make sure that they earn a living wage. And that's the myopic nature of our state governors with due apologies. Some of them are actually anti-labor in their thinking. Because you are dealing with less than 10% of the population. You are claiming that you don't have enough resources to pay. Yet you go ahead and appoint aides in their hundreds. Aides that don't have offices, aides that don't contribute anything meaningful to the state economy. And the people who are generating this wage, you sideline them and cry that you don't, unless the federal government review the revenue sharing formula. I think we need to be very serious with governance in this country. I said it earlier. Part of the reason why there is sustaining and lingering insecurity in Nigeria is because of high level of unemployment and poverty. You cannot divorce those two from what we are experiencing. And this is the time for us to look at what are the things that we can do to reduce substantially the bloating cost of governance. One of such is not to reduce workers' salary or to reduce the staff strength of the workforce, because you actually need to employ more. I mean, there are many more teachers. I have been a PTA teacher years back in Oyo State, where Parent Teachers Association have to come in to complement the staff of schools. And that situation is still sustaining in many states where enough teachers are not being recruited to be able to give our children quality education. So what I'm saying invariably is that the argument about pursuing this line of thought that until when we remove the minimum wage from the exclusive to concurrent list, that's when we will solve the problem. You are actually going to create a whole lot of problems because you cannot see a state like Oyo and Osun that are contiguous, and then you say, your workers should get far less than what Osun workforce is getting. It's going to create unhealthy rivalry, and at the end of the day, you will have more states going into industrial actions, restiveness and unrest in those states. So it's better to leave the situation as it is. But this is just an advisory. The Honorable Minister has said that when this bill, even if it passed through the State House of, even if it passed the House of Reps, it has to be concurred to by the Senate. So if there are discrepancies, there will be conference committee. And because it's a constitutional amendment, it still have to get the nod of at least 24 out of 36 states. And if the feelers from the protest of last Wednesday is anything to go by, what I read in the paper is that virtually every state houses of assembly said they were in solidarity with workers and that they would not do anything to harm the welfare and well-being of workers. But I don't trust this bill getting to the states. If it does get to the state, you can be rest assured that they will get the 24, given the nature and character of state assembly and how pliable they are to the whims and caprices of the governor. But it has to be shut down at this level, at the national level, to be sure that, look, let's enlighten them. This is not in the best interest of even the National Assembly, because it's all about image. what image does the National Assembly want to have in the minds of Nigerians?
Okay, many thanks, Jide Ojo. The issues are really, strong enough there. We have the public hearing, and then the, going to the Senate, and of course going to the states. I mean, the journey is too long, really, for one to really conclude or throw in something at the moment. But all the same, you're watching Good Morning Nigeria, and we're discussing minimum wage, concurrent or exclusive list. We'll now take a break, and we'll be back with more on this program after a moment.
Nigerian youths are about the greatest asset the country has at the moment. It is therefore not surprising that the administration of President Muhammadu Buhari is strategically responding to the yearnings of the youth through multiple projects and programs. Youth Entrepreneurship Support Years by Bank of Industry, the Youth Investment Fund by the CBN, and several other conditional cash transfer programs. Recruitment of 774,000 social workers, majority of whom are youths, and so many other projects that are beneficial to youths directly or indirectly. If the administration can do all this, definitely with a degree of patience and time, it can achieve more. Nigerian youths must come together to say no to terrorism, no to vandalism, and no to all disruptive tendencies. Hashtag Youth for Greater Nigeria. Pacifying the youths, unifying the nation.
Always remember, this man I have been my creative design. Really like it, but you deserve a break. Even in the hustle and bustle of the day, you can indulge in a cup of 3-in-1 Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Cadbury Hot Chocolate. Indulge. You deserve a break.
Guess what?
What?
I scored a hat trick today.
Cool.
Wow.
And how did you celebrate?
Just do your hands like this.
And hold your nose like this.
Body odor is caused by germs. That's why you need the new improved Dettol Cool Soap, which protects against 99.9% odor-causing germs with an extra burst of menthol freshness. Dettol, be 100% sure.
These days, people get their news and information from more media sources than ever before. Some of the news and information given are fake, unverified, doctored, and manufactured to create confusion, stir disaffection, and cause disunity. Before you believe or share any news, ask yourself, is this real? Is it from a credible source? Is it verified or verifiable? Fake news is dangerous, whether you do it for fun or for political gains. Real people can get hurt. Fake news, don't create it, don't spread it.
This is a public service announcement from NTA.
Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it. Disinfect and protect your home with Jik. Jik kills 99.9% of illness-causing germs. Disinfect floors, kitchen and bathroom surfaces, and wash white cloths, towels, and dishcloths with Jik bleach. Just Jik it.
The second wave of the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic is upon us.
To safeguard lives of our people, the government has signed the health protection regulations, which makes wearing a face mask mandatory in public places.
Wear a mask. Keep social and physical distancing. Avoid crowded places. Wash your hands regularly with soap and clean water. And use hand sanitizer.
COVID-19 is real. Do not be infected. Do not spread it. This message is brought to you by the Nigerian Television Authority, NTA.
You're welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria. Of course, our topic is minimum wage to be on the concurrent list or exclusive list. And Nigerians are beginning to react to this conversation by way of tweets. We have a number of them here, Honorable.
Yeah.
So let's begin with Delejak Solomon. The move by NLC to maintain the current wage structure, which gives the federal government the power to negotiate the minimum wage for workers across the country, is very apt because the rights of the Nigerian workers cannot be trampled upon.
Suleiman Babagana says moving it to concurrent list is not advisable, as some governors tend to jeopardize labor demands, even though both governments can make law and on matters that fall under the concurrent list. The central government, being supreme, tends to be more accommodative to some extent.
The law Alpha C, I think it should come down to the concurrent list. This will enable states pay in accordance with their financial capacity and still embark on infrastructural development than fixing it from the top, thereby pitching workers against state governors.
And Bello Muhammad says the way forward is for NLC to engage positively to address the issues of productivity, ghost workers, and capability to pay.
Now, Mike Anyakwo, the argument whether minimum wage remains in exclusive lists or moves to concurrent appears whenever there is mutual mistrust. It can be in either of the lists without any hindrance in governance, but it appears that the minimum wage agreement was done in a haste because governments are finding it difficult to meet the obligation of payments of salaries as at when due.
Chris Simeon says it's only dialogue that can solve this. NLC, federal government, and state governments should come together and settle the issue of minimum wage crisis once and for all. At a critical time like this, let's think of what we can do to make our country better and do away with individualistic behavior and attitude.
Usman Banu Kantu, the fact is so glaring that 95% of the states of the Federation rely on federal government monthly grant for governance. With this unfortunate situation, no objection in moving Nigeria's minimum wage to concurrent list to avert ancestral rates.
While for Festus Akimboyua, Nigeria's minimum wage should remain on the exclusive list in order to continue to make entitlement to it compulsory for all Nigerian workers. It's insensitive to want to change it. What we need in addition to the minimum wage is the living wage, which employers can choose to pay.
But whether exclusive or concurrent, as long as it is the same crop of political office holders we have, there would be nothing to be achieved. What matters most is delivering on the social contract to the electorate. Unemployment and poverty are the two major issues affecting us.
Baraminus Dynamic says 30,000 naira should remain the minimum wage for the Nigerian worker, and any state that can pay more should do so.
All right, Ahmed Mohammed said the issue of minimum wage has to be treated with urgency. The Federal Government, National Assembly, and Labour Union have to intervene. All state governors must be compelled to meet up with it, and such it should be on the concurrent list.
And finally, Mutana Farouk says the issue of the minimum wage to remain on the exclusive list or move to the concurrent list is inconsequential to the vast majority of Nigerians. What matters is the willingness of government at all levels to pay a living wage that will be sustainable and acceptable to all.
All right. Gentlemen, here we are. We've heard from some Nigerians, and of course you see that their opinions differ. Some say it should remain, some say, look, it could move to concurrent list.
Opinions will differ depending on the knowledge available to Nigerians, and that's why this kind of your public enlightenment program is very important. People need to understand what minimum wage means, what rules guide it at national and international levels, what role should each of the partners play in a country setting. And we've been discussing this, and I'm sure Nigerians are following, because we need knowledge to be able to engage some of these processes. They need to know that which setting play a very critical role in a country's development. And if you look at the condition of many of the states, if workers are paid and they are paid adequately, it has a way of stimulating the economy, the local economy. People pay for rents, people buy petty foods, people eat, and all of those. And it catalyzes the economy. So, but when you pay low wages, you also have a way of depressing the economy. And that's why our agitation for minimum wage on the exclusive list is to preserve that the lowest of the lowest worker is protected to some reasonable extent. If you look at our situation, Nigeria at a point was being referred to as the poverty capital of the world. And there's no doubt that there's also wage poverty. And if we move in the direction that some of the state governors want us to move, then wages become more depressed, and if you don't take care, they will be promoting poverty even in their own communities without knowing the danger of such. So I think what we need to overcome wage poverty is to continue on the path that we are in, on the path that aligns with the international convention and best practices, on the path that has worked, at least with some difficulties, but that we've mastered to get all the parties, all the partners, all the social partners to get together to set the framework in the best interest of the country. What we need is also for the governors to begin to prioritize what is important in governance. And to prioritize what is important in governance is to look at working people who generate this wealth and give some attention to them. That they are currently not doing. They are comfortable more with contracts. They are comfortable more with, like my brother colleague said, retinue of officers, retinue of political office holders, and enormous income to that category of workers, to that category of appointees, while not focusing on appropriate remuneration for working people. And when we talk of minimum wage, people must bear in mind, I'll repeat, that we are not talking about wages for government workers. We are talking of wages for all workers in all states, whether they are working in restaurants, whether they are working in petty factories, wherever they may be. That is for them. It is not only for state workers. People must not, it's not about state government and labor. It's about labor saying that every worker, whether that worker works for state government, whether that worker works for federal government, whether that worker works for Mr. Biggs, everybody. So it's
as long as you're a worker.
As far as you're a worker. So it's, the idea is actually really to protect people, to protect people at the bottom. And like the Honorable Minister said, then the rest, you find the balance of the rest with negotiation, with bargaining. But for those that are too weak at the bottom, somebody must provide that protection. And that's where minimum wage exclusive is very critical.
Is Labour really afraid of the fact that if this goes to the concurrent list, that it may not be able to protect its members if the states take control of determining
we have no doubt about our capability to protect our members across the country. But the danger is that we'll be fighting in every state that wants to submerge the interests of working people. And you can imagine what that will be within the context of even our desire to move our country forward. There's no doubt about it. We'll deregulate labor strike. We'll deregulate constant rift and conflict between the labor and the different tiers of government. So I think it's important as it is to set the floor as it is and allow the states find their level negotiating for other category of workers.
Ismail Bello, thank you so much for that elucidation. It's all about education, what you're saying now. Education in the sense that if people are well educated, all this couldn't have been, something to discuss, as we all agree that it just, dissipating energy unnecessarily. Jide Ojo, education plays a key role in this. And of course, had people, most especially like democracy we have, the sponsor of this bill is from a constituency. And of course, he's representing his people. Had the people known so much about that, maybe they might have really cautioned him about that. And of course, the labor in that regard, in states too, should know this. And as you postulated, state houses of assembly are also backing this labor move not to take off this very item from the exclusive list to concurrent list. How do you see the relevance of education in this regard in relation to knowing the facts and the figures for people to really act before it gets worse?
Well, very good question. I believe that because, as at the time of negotiation, there was a lot of media coverage and people were enlightened by the media. But since it became a law, and mark you, this national minimum wage, the last one in 2019, was the fastest bill passed by the National Assembly. It was passed within a month. I mean, House of Reps. It was the Senate that passed after the election. The House of Reps, within the month of the president sending the bill, if my memory serves me right, it was passed within a month. The first, second, public hearing, and the third reading, and it was passed. But awaiting the concurrence of the Senate, and after the election, before the dissolution of the Senate in June, they passed, and then the president signed, and that was how it became a law. So it's a federal law. But like I said, I think it behoves. It's high time the Nigerian Labour Congress have its own radio and TV station. Believe you me, many people who are weighing in on labor matters are insufficiently knowledgeable about those issues. And that's why people have come to realize, people have come to tag NLC, TUC as irritant, as people who are just trying to cause trouble and unrest in the country. So I would advise that you could start with a community radio, get so that you can use that opportunity to enlighten the public about some of these issues. On a final note, as we close, my own take is this. The part of the enlightenment that needs to come is why this law, this national minimum wage, covers every strata of workers. It also stated that you must employ at least minimum of 5 workers for that law to kick in. So if you have a sales girl, 1 or 2, you cannot say that you pay that person 30,000 minimum wage. I think there is a benchmark of minimum of 5 workers working for you, then you have to be. But the last point I want to make is also to encourage labor that labor needs to monitor, particularly private sector. There is a lot of abuse of this, particularly by some of our, I don't want to mention names, foreign companies operating in Nigeria that are paying their workers, slave wages, even in spite of this national law.
Well, that is indeed true, and that was why I raised the issue of the mechanism for monitoring employers who are not in the government circle. Because if you did not monitor, there are some Nigerians who are shortchanged. Right, and Ajido said, if you investigate, you find out that very many Nigerians are shortchanged. Those who are working, especially for foreign firms in this country.
You're very right, and you remember the Honorable Minister corroborated, where there are unions, there's already a monitoring mechanism.
Yeah.
Where there are no unions, there are no monitoring mechanism. But the beauty of it is that every workman or woman who suffers injustice has a way of crying out. Either to human rights community, to labor unions ourselves.
Yes.
To labor unions
ourselves.
Exactly, sir. Several, particularly the NSC. The NSC is the umbrella body. We are not directly responsible to the worker. But the worker comes to the NSC. I'm handling one currently as I sit here of a worker who does not belong to any union.
Yes.
Who suffers injury at work. We're on top of it. We've got in some level of compensation. Okay. We've got in treated. So you are and those kind of matters. But I agree with him. We need to put our eyes more, particularly on workplaces where unions are not present.
And there's some more education
to also strengthen what is
finally, the Honorable Minister, most likely in maybe 120 seconds.
Yes. The Act itself, we liberalize the Act.
All right.
Because if you go to the Constitution, Section 40, belonging to trade union is by choice. So freedom of association. So there are some workers that are not members of trade union. So we went to the Minimum Wage Act. Those workers can petition the Ministry of Labor directly. We even get them latitude to even take their case to National Industrial Court directly.
Okay.
It's in that act. And my brother Ojo, I think we did not accept that issue of 5 persons. We wanted to give more latitude. We made it 25 persons. 25 in the act.
Okay.
So I don't want Kirian with his driver, housemaid, his gardener, and this with 5. Kylian is pigeonholed that he must pay 30. I don't know how much he's earning. And if we do that, we are not creating jobs. We want to give everyone latitude. If you're not employing up to 25, this law doesn't apply to you.
Okay.
It doesn't apply to you in the private sector. So you can see that we gave everything a human face. So I do not think, if you move it like I said before, assuming without considering that it is to go to the concurrent list, it means that the federal and the state assemblies can legislate on it. And I have said that when National Assembly legislates and the States Assembly legislates, and whatever they legislate is in conflict with the Act of National Assembly, their own
National
act
Assembly, of course,
will supervene.
Yes.
So,
and, on that note, Honourable Minister, I would like to, thank you for sharing your thoughts and your time this morning on this edition of Good Morning Nigeria, a very, very important issue. Dr. Chris Ngige, Minister of Labour and Employment, thank you once again for coming.
Thank you. Okay.
Ismail Bello, Acting Secretary General of the Nigerian Labour Congress, also many thanks to you. Jide Ujo is also here this morning. Jide, thank you so much. As always, you are rather a regular on our program. Thank you for coming this morning. All right.
And we thank you so very much for being part of this program this morning. I am Yusuf Nadab Usman. Please stay safe and take responsibility.